thrown up because they said I was a gay person. And they told me to go to a committee that they said to go and confess. And I told them I wouldn't do that. You are not Jesus Christ. You are not, even if my pastor had called me to say confess, I would not do it because I told them I'll be gay and I will not change. That's me. And I wouldn't accept no condemnation. So I'm only saying, how can other, what strategy is he as the bishop of the South African Council of Churches? Because one of the first condemnation you have will be from the bishop of the Liberal Council of Churches. So what strategy are you using to be able to do all the kind of work that you do, speaking on LGBT issues, looking at it from the justice of standpoints? Because Jesus said everybody should be treated fairly. And if Jesus didn't come for those that are already sinners, he came for sinners. So how come the church is even throwing us that they consider as sinners away from the church instead of embracing us? Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Tony Kruger Ayabazibwe. This is a comment, really, not a question. And I think I might be saying something that a whole lot of people know already, but anyway. There is actually such a thing as queer theology. A lot of queer theology is based in the US or in Europe, which is a bit of a problem. But there is a particular woman that I know of who came out of South America, was a liberation theologian, and pulled together the strands of liberation theology and queer theory to create a queer theology. The problem that still exists is that there aren't enough people in Africa or in Southern Africa doing queer theology, but there are some. And I think that that's important that we know that and that we make use of those resources.
Thank you very much. Could I have two more? Yes? Mike, front here, please. Sorry.
Hi, my name is Gabriel. The question I had is, I know in South Africa there's a big move towards thinking about intersecting struggles, and I'm wondering how some of the speakers may respond. So for example, I think the challenge with many LGBT activist groups I know, when they see a mining company, is some of the human rights violations there that might not be LGBT specific, but it becomes hard to engage in that space if we think about what's been happening there. And on the other hand, I think by isolating LGBT issues, it might make it easier to engage in religious spaces, but LGBT issues are connected to the rights of sex workers, for example, and other groups as well. And so when we isolate it, it might be easy to integrate it within a structural institution. But that means we isolate it from other connected struggles. And I thought I'd highlight that. Thank you.
Thank you. Last one. Burning one. Right at the back there.
My question is for the judge. I come from Malawi, and this is where the first people were arrested for LGBTI issues. Now, I wanted to ask you, Judge, if we were to engage the judiciary to reform these laws, these draconian laws, how best can we go about it? Because I think the ones who gave us these laws have long done away with them. It's not even the Malawians who came up with these penal codes or the constitution. I'm sorry, the laws that we have. It's the missionaries who came to Malawi with their governments. They're the ones who made those laws. But then when they went back to their countries, they did away with them. We still are keeping them today. Now, how can we best engage our judiciary or our government so that we do away with these laws? Thanks.
Thank you very much. So I'd like to turn back to the panel. There are two questions for you, Judge.
Okay. Well, can I start with the Malawian question? I think we've got to confront the Malawi judiciary, and I think it can be done. I think that one needs a meeting of activists in Malawi, which is an intersectoral meeting, a meeting with human rights lawyers, with gender and feminist activists in Malawi, to which you invite judges. And you invite a judge who will come and talk. There's Michael Kirby from Australia. There are other judges who will talk. I will certainly come back to Malawi. The evening when I spoke at State House, it was a meeting on AIDS, but there were judges present, and I spoke as a proudly gay man at that meeting. And I spoke about the importance of the fact that there were gay and lesbian people in Malawi who were being discriminated against. So I think one can do that, and I think the shock of being confronted is a very beneficial shock.
Yeah.
And I think that we can do that in Malawi. And I just want to answer the other colleague's question about the American Supreme Court. I think the Chief Justice Roberts, was making a slightly different point. At the time the gay and lesbian marriage case was heard about 6 months ago, and at the time the judgment was delivered in June, a clear majority of American people, in fact, wanted to have gay and lesbian marriage equality. I think the figure was about 60%, amazingly. The Chief Justice was making a different point. He said that it should be up to each state. So the southern states, Alabama, Mississippi, Missouri, Louisiana, South Carolina, they still had a majority of people who didn't want gay and lesbian equality. So he said, you've lost your chance to persuade those people democratically. But I think that he misunderstood what the argument was on the majority side, and his judgment shows that he misunderstood many of the arguments that Justice Kennedy made in his majority judgment, that this was not a matter for waiting anymore. This was a matter of rights. And when you, for instance, say, when the Constitutional Court, before I was a member of it, under Chief Justice Chastelson, when they abolished the death penalty, we know that 80% of South Africans, black and white, still wanted the death penalty. The Constitution isn't about what the majority wants. It's about what we've agreed is right for us all, even when the majority wants it, and even when it's for a minority.
Thank you very much. Bishop, the question was whether you'd give him your pair of glasses to take back home with him. In your response, in terms of the strategy which you're using, could you also comment on Fokisa? Is there anything happening at the regional level? I'm just constantly trying to lift this conversation to also reflect on what's happening in the region.
I'm going to start with the Fokisa question.
Okay. Could you explain what Fokisa is?
Fokisa is the Fellowship of Christian Councils in Southern Africa. If you like, it is the sub-regional part of the All Africa Conference of Churches. It's got its strengths and its weaknesses. Its major weakness is that it's mainly populated by the general secretaries of the councils rather than the bodies of churches in the region. That's something we're dealing with. But we had a conversation just recently in Gaborone in the preparation ahead of the SADC summit. And there was this consultation between the churches as represented by this small group of general secretaries, which I think is the weakness, and the trade union movement, and all the civil society organizations.
Yes.
And of course, amongst a number of issues that were raised in the workshop we had was the LGBTI issue. And this session was supposed to be chaired by the churches, and they were hearing about it for the first time when they arrived. And we've got people there that come from countries where, in fact, to even think that there's a human being who belongs to the LGBTI community is unthinkable. So the general secretaries are saying, if I participated in this, I'll be arrested upon arrival at home.
Oh, wow.
They're not even talking about their churches, what the churches will say, whom they represent. They're talking about the fact that they're walking into their country to be known to have participated, even sitting in the room where there was a debate, might get them into trouble. And so, then if you're going to get Fokisa to engage this, seems to, and I asked the question, of course, I'm new in this conversation of the councils of churches because I'm only an acting general secretary. I'm saying, Vakabiki, wait a minute. Why is this only coming up now? They said, no, but we talked about it 3 years ago. And we expected that as we're working in our sectors and trade unions, the churches are working in theirs. Oh, okay. So that's why we're expected to chair a session because we're supposed to have an opinion that would have developed over the last 3 years. And it is this point that I say, you're not going to have an opinion that arises from general secretaries. And I have to say, I'm not speaking on behalf of the churches of South Africa. I'm speaking in my own behalf. Because the churches of South Africa haven't got a position on this that they have actually adopted. And that's exactly where Fokisa is. It is not going to have an opinion that comes from the churches to the extent that it is only the General Secretary, Murutu Simane in Botswana, by himself. And the same applies in all the countries. That's where it is. That debate is not happening in the churches because that's not been taken up. And then coming back to your question, the question then gets to be dealt with in a way that says to me, I am not necessarily unique in any special way. I'm just like a simple South African who has lived with the challenges of injustice in my own society. I have been tortured. I've prayed to be killed when I thought it was not worth living anymore, under torture. But what has kept me alive is a sense of the responsibility to humanize even the person that tortures me. Now, you don't arrive at that position theoretically. You arrive at it as trying to wrestle with your reality, what it means. And that, I suppose, is what liberates me. And I'm saying that I've looked in the face of my torturers. And I've had black security police who are very sympathetic. They say, please stop this thing, man. Why don't you just stop this? You'll be okay. After all, things change. I was once a policeman when we could only sit at the back of the van. You could never sit in front. We never were allowed to carry guns. But things have changed. I now even drive the police cars. Things have changed. And I can even carry a gun. You see, what are you struggling about? Things do change. You need to live at the other side to know the pain of repression and oppression. When you have experienced that, you have a better sense of what other people are struggling with. And I have got, therefore, in the families where I've related to this, even in my own family, I've been able to say to people, you know, before you begin to judge, think about what it would be if it were you. Even if you don't understand, just think if it were you. I've just come back from Zululand, where a woman has been killed because she has an albinism condition. And she's been killed because she has an albinism condition. And it says that, in fact, every parent whose child has got that condition has got to watch out for that child all the days of his or her life. You cannot have a situation like that. So in any case of injustice, it is an issue of justice, and I accept that. It does not matter whether I would, even if I didn't think about the gospel of love, even I didn't think about that, I would have to think about just the justice that Justice Cameron would stand for. So I'm saying that we need to look at it from the two angles of justice, which is the constitutional issue, where such a constitution allows, or love, which is where the gospel comes across. And I promise you, no bishop who is an apostle of the gospel can deny the imperative of love in the message of Jesus Christ.
Thank you very much. The others were comments which don't require a response. The last two, any half-second comments?
Just in closing from my side,
Yes.
I think